What is going on, soccer fans? Welcome back. Today we have to talk about it. There is only one thing on our minds, this crazy transfer market. I mean, is there even anything else worth discussing right now? Sure, the friendly matches have kicked off, and that is fine, but this summer transfer window is absolutely wild. Seriously, what else are we supposed to focus on besides these transfers? Right now, negotiations for Rodri are heating up, and the fallout is massive. There are chats out there where people are claiming Real Madrid let him slip right through their fingers. Some say Rodri never wanted the move, others claim Madrid never actually cared. Everyone is just spinning their own story. But let us be real. Madrid rarely misses out on a target of this level when they actually go after them. Think about it. Florentino Perez and Real Madrid do not just walk away from a World Cup, pick their ultimate target, and then lose a player like Rodri over a measly 2 or 3 or 5 million. That whole idea just seems incredibly fishy to me. Plus, we cannot forget that Rodri was basically Riquelme's big campaign promise. People kept asking me before and after the World Cup whether the club truly wanted him or if it was all talk. My take is simple. If Real Madrid genuinely wanted Rodri, there is absolutely no way they would have let him get away. If Rodri goes on to have a spectacular season, the narrative will shift instantly. Fans will start pointing fingers, deeply regretting the missed chance, and accusing him of betraying Madrid just because he chose another path. But if he struggles with injuries down the road, they will immediately spin it and claim that Madrid knew all along he was fragile and prone to getting hurt. Some will say that is exactly why they backed off. But the cold hard truth is that he is set to make 15 million euros a year at Barcelona. Barcelona made an opening bid of 45 million, which City rejected. Manchester City wants 70, 80, or at least 65 million. So both clubs are locked in intense negotiations right now, trying to settle on a final transfer fee. Personally, I think this deal is going to happen sooner or later. But then again, we all believed the exact same thing not too long ago when it came to his rumored move to Real Madrid. What fascinates me most about this whole dramatic situation, as I mentioned yesterday, is the sheer world-class quality and control Rodri brings to the very center of the pitch. It is absolutely phenomenal, massive, and instantly upgrades everything Barcelona currently has. Frenkie de Jong playing or not, it does not matter. Rodri will make this team infinitely better in midfield, without a shadow of a doubt. Now let us analyze how this big signing impacts their search for a star center forward. There are two main things here. First, I am seriously wondering how Barcelona is actually going to manage to register all of these players under the league rules. I mean, they are barely scraping by to meet the 1-to-1 rule, yet they are throwing money around in this window as if they had unlimited financial fair play room, not to mention their massively bloated squad wage bill. So, yes, I am incredibly curious to see how they pull this off. Think about it. Even if they negotiate the transfer fee down to $50 or $60 million, Rodri still demands 15 million net in salary every single year. We are talking about astronomical figures here. Which brings me right back to wondering how on earth Barcelona is going to fit him into their registered squad. Second, how does this affect their hunt for a new striker? Try telling Atletico Madrid right now that you are tight on cash. If you tell them you cannot pay top dollar for Julian because your finances are tight, they will just tell you to stop buying Rodri instead. And I am using Julian as the prime example, but it could be anyone. Right now, he remains the absolute priority for Barcelona. It seems like they have deliberately toned down the media noise lately, probably to cool off some of the heavy, uncomfortable tension that had been building up between the two rival clubs. But the reality is that Julian is still their top target, and let us be clear, he is definitely not going to be a cheap signing. Honestly, at this point, I really do not know if they can actually pull off his signature after spending so much on Rodri. Remember, we still do not even know how they plan to register Rodri himself. Now, another option they had on the table recently was Asllani, but Asllani went to RB Leipzig, and he was never going to be the starting number 9 for Barca anyway. Meanwhile, Ferran Torres is stuck in limbo, unsure if he is staying or leaving. I bet Ferran looks at all this drama and thinks to himself, well, maybe I can actually end up as the starting striker for Barca, sign a contract extension, and stay here, even though Paris Saint-Germain is actively trying to recruit me. But I will say it again. I have this growing fear that Barcelona might actually end up without a proper striker simply because they blew their budget on Rodri. And look, Even if Roach raises the tactical level of this entire team, if you do not have a reliable goal scorer up front, this squad is going to seriously struggle. On top of that, unlike Real Madrid, Barcelona does not have high-value assets they can easily sell off for massive profits. Sure, Ferran Torres could leave since Paris Saint-Germain is highly interested. And honestly, those guys in Paris are putting together an incredible transfer window of their own. We will get to Paris Saint-Germain shortly, but since Ferran is entering the final year of his current deal, he is definitely not going to bring in $100 million. I mean, even if he had a 5-year contract, he still would not be a $100 million player. He is simply not the kind of player that is going to generate a massive windfall for Barcelona, especially with his contract ticking down to its final months. So who else can they actually sell? Casado is on the chopping block and they are currently negotiating his transfer with Al Hilal. How much for Casado? Maybe 25 or 30 million. Maybe they can play with the books on Joao Cancelo's deal to puff up the numbers. But, let's be honest, what other star like Ronald Araujo is actually left for them to put on the transfer block? Who else can bring in that kind of serious cash when Barcelona has a core of players, and yet they want to sell off Rafinha? Selling Rafinha just to sign Anthony Gordon for $80 million would be a massive mistake. Rafinha is simply too vital for this squad, a crucial player they cannot afford to lose. So yeah, I am incredibly curious to see how Barcelona is going to end up piecing this entire squad together. Obviously, Rodri is a world-class midfielder who instantly elevates any team on the planet. But Barcelona desperately needs a true center forward, and they still haven't fixed their gaping problems with the fullbacks. Sure, there's still plenty of time left in the transfer window, but the reality is Barcelona is practically running on financial fumes right now. Unless, of course, they pull off some massive, shocking sale out of nowhere that blindsides all of us. Something we can't even see coming today. Who are they selling, Dani Olmo or Furman? I highly doubt it. Gavi is definitely off limits. So who will they sell to bring in that kind of serious money? We will have to wait and see how this plays out. As of right now, Barcelona's opening bid is simply not enough. The negotiation remains wide open, and Rodri is set to earn $15 million if he signs. I just mentioned Paris Saint-Germain. They are currently locked in talks with Liverpool over Bradley Barcola. Paris Saint-Germain already secured Magnus Akliouche, a highly rated young talent they managed to snag for an incredibly cheap price. $50 million for the Monaco star. He is young, direct, a brilliant dribbler with an eye for goal, and the future of France. He actually went to the last World Cup. Honestly, Paris Saint-Germain pulled off a massive steal by landing him for just $50 million. Goncalo Ramos left for Milan for $75 million, and now they are negotiating the exit of Bradley Barcola. Bradley Barcola wants Liverpool, and Liverpool wants Barcola. But here's the catch. Last year, Liverpool dropped a staggering $160-something million to sign Alexander Isak. So, how do they explain to Paris Saint-Germain now that they suddenly cannot afford to spend big? First bid was around $115 million. Paris Saint-Germain literally laughed. Paris Saint-Germain insists Bradley Barcola is valued at $180 million, and they shouldn't even offer less than $150 million. And what can Liverpool really say? They paid $160 million last year, plus they just got huge wages off their books, like the massive salary they were paying to Mohamed Salah. That negotiation is wide open. I believe this deal will happen eventually. At the end of the day, Liverpool is a club with massive financial backing, and they proved in the last transfer window that they are absolutely willing to invest big. They have a brand new manager and a fresh project that needs backing with top-tier talent. This squad definitely needs upgrading, and there are already some departures on the horizon. Let's see. Some exits won't bring in immediate transfer fees, but they will certainly free up massive space on the wage bill. Just like Mohamed Salah's departure. There are rumors of Curtis Jones heading to Inter Milan, and maybe others, like Cody Gakpo, who could potentially end up in Turkey. There are quite a few moving parts here. And speaking of Turkey, that is actually a destination that Dusan Vlahovic is desperate to avoid. Dusan Vlahovic is caught right in the middle of this mess. He has an offer from Besiktas, but he sees Barcelona struggling to find a striker, yet doing absolutely nothing about it. He also knows a massive door could swing wide open at Atletico Madrid if Alexander Sorloth leaves. If Sorloth actually leaves, Vlahovic could easily become the new starting striker for Atletico Madrid. So even though the massive contract waiting for Vlahovic in Turkey is incredibly tempting, his priority remains playing in a much more competitive European league. Juventus did wait for him for a while, as we discussed before, but they ultimately signed Kolo Muani, so there simply is no room left for him. The only way Juventus could ever sign another striker, whom they desperately need, is if they find a way to offload Jonathan David, but that looks highly complex, especially since David arrived on a free transfer, which means his current wage is a massive burden that nobody wants to take on, especially after his incredibly disappointing debut season with Juventus. Consequently, Juventus cannot even dream of signing a new frontman as long as Jonathan David remains in their squad. Vlahovic, who saw Juventus as his safety net, is now losing that option. He still has Turkey on the table, but he is keeping a close eye on Barcelona. He cannot force their hand, but he knows an opportunity could open up there, and especially at Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid absolutely must find a buyer for Sorloth, and they obviously need to replace Griezmann too. Plus, they are incredibly close to signing Cuti Romero, which inevitably means they will have to ship out several current squad members. Simeone wants Nico Gonzalez to return, while Noel Molina is heading to Italy, which will immediately clear up some vital roster space. 2 or 3 players are set to leave. In fact, Thiago Almada is already gone. River Plate paid $20 million for Almada, with $10 million of that going straight back to Atletico Madrid. This means we are highly likely to see Atletico Madrid being extremely active in the final hours of this chaotic transfer window. Yes, they are actually beating Inter Milan to Cuti Romero, one of the most talented central defenders out there. If they manage to pull this off, it is easily one of the most fascinating and high-profile defensive deals currently available on the entire market. Romero going to Inter Milan would be a massive signing for them, but it seems Inter has asked for more time to make a final decision, not because they lack the money to pay, but to figure out how they can actually scrape together that €40 million price tag Tottenham is demanding. Meanwhile, Tottenham basically looked at them and said, "You know what? We already have a very concrete offer on the table from Atletico Madrid, so let us just wait and see how this all plays out." But right now, the feeling is that the stellar Argentine center-back will ultimately sign with Atletico Madrid, completely snubbing Inter Milan despite how desperately the Italian giants wanted him to reinforce their defensive line. This is just one major piece of the chaotic domino effect we are seeing play out between Atletico Madrid, Paris Saint-Germain, Liverpool, Real Madrid, and Barcelona, with all of them caught up in the massive power struggles of this wild summer transfer window. As we mentioned earlier, Barcelona is actively negotiating with Al Hilal over the departure of Marc Casado. Then you have Manchester City. Just look at the insane business they managed to pull off. They bought goalkeeper James Trafford last year for £30 million, which is roughly $38 million, only to keep him sitting on the bench for the entire year. This is the perfect example of Premier League inflation and how English clubs absolutely distort the market. Now they are selling him to Leeds United for £45 million, or nearly $58 million. That means they pocketed a cool $20 million in just 1 year, basically for keeping him as a bench warmer. That transaction generates a massive capital gain for them, on top of what they already saved by having the goalkeeper in the squad last year. To replace him, they are now bringing in Geronimo Rulli from Marseille for just $3.5 million. So Manchester City keeps rolling, not just because they have oil money to burn anyway, but because they pull off these clever transfers that generate massive financial windfalls. This is Premier League market manipulation at its absolute finest. Personally, I have my doubts, but there is endless chatter about this new central midfielder, Ayoub Bouadi. The youngster from Lille, who had an absolutely sensational World Cup campaign with Morocco, supposedly has everything virtually locked in to complete his move to Manchester City. Honestly, I just do not think he is the elite defensive midfielder Manchester City really needs right now. Nico Gonzalez is more than capable of stepping up, proving his quality, and making that starting spot his own. If you ask me, deep down inside, Manchester City, especially with Enzo Maresca at the helm, still desperately wants Enzo Fernandez, and they have reportedly told everyone involved to just tone down the public statements and let the crazy transfer market settle. especially with all that toxic drama swirling around Enzo Fernandez regarding those controversial chants with the Argentine national team, his potential return, or whether he is staying put, and that massive transfer fee his club paid. It seems like they have successfully quieted down the loud media storm just enough so they can proceed with these delicate negotiations in a far more natural and normal environment, but I am absolutely convinced that their ultimate goal is still to pry the Chelsea midfielder away. Speaking of Chelsea, they have already secured Maxence Lacroix, the dominant central defender from Crystal Palace, yet they are somehow still scouring the market for even more center backs to bolster their defensive depth. Switching over to Major League Soccer news, Chucky Lozano is officially joining the LA Galaxy. This is an absolute shocker. And another huge name destined for the Galaxy is Sergi Roberto. He failed to reach a contract extension agreement with his Italian club Como, and now he is officially headed over to Los Angeles as a free agent. The Galaxy desperately needs this lift. They had built up massive expectations surrounding the high-profile signings they promised to bring in. Whether they actually live up to those expectations remains to be seen. Chucky Lozano is facing a massive challenge. I will not call it the biggest of his life because that was probably joining Napoli back in the day, but now, after being left completely out of San Diego FC plans while still pocketing a hefty salary of $9 million, which is what I believe he was raking in, it looks like he might earn even more with the Galaxy. He absolutely must perform, especially since the team desperately needs him to deliver on the pitch immediately. The signing of Sergi Roberto has been another massive shock. Remember, former Barca star Riqui Puig is already on that squad, but sadly, Puig is currently sidelined with a major injury for the second straight season. So we will have to wait and see how they reconstruct this lineup, but to me, bringing in Sergi Roberto feels like a very smart move. He is a marquee player who can genuinely make a massive difference for any team in Major League Soccer. Since Sergi Roberto failed to work out a new deal with Como, the Italian side has pivoted and is bringing in Yan Couto to reinforce that right-back position instead. Meanwhile, El Bilal Touri is headed on loan to Parma after his rather chaotic stint with Atalanta. His time in Bergamo had its ups and downs, including a very severe knee injury that kept him off the pitch for a long time, so he is ultimately packing his bags for Parma. Parma is actually having a phenomenal transfer window under the guidance of their American owners, who took over a few years ago. It will be interesting to see how far they can climb in Serie A, and you have to assume their main goal is to secure a much more stable mid-table finish rather than constantly fighting relegation. In other news, Franco Mastantuono to Fiorentina is finally official. Personally, I think this move is going to do him wonders. Everything happened so fast and felt quite premature for Mastantuono, which is something we have already discussed a million times. But his transfer to Fiorentina is a done deal, and we have already seen the official videos of him wearing the club jersey and undergoing his medical exams. Since Fiorentina does not have European competitions to distract them, it will be the perfect, low-pressure environment where they will welcome him with open arms. We will have to see how these issues play out. If he fails to make some kind of immediate impact on the pitch, these loan deals usually turn sour. When things go wrong, the club simply shrugs and says, "All right, you know what? Why play a guy who is only here on loan?" But considering it is Real Madrid sending him out on loan, they must have locked in a clause guaranteeing him a decent amount of minutes on the pitch, which is essential if he wants to mature and find his feet in European football, which is exactly what he needs and what has been missing from his game lately. Honestly, it looks like a brilliant move for his career, and Real Madrid deserves a massive amount of credit for being incredibly reasonable. They let the kid make his own choice without putting the loan fee first. Or the loan. They did not obsess over buy options or buyback clauses. Instead, they focused entirely on putting him in a place where he actually felt comfortable. A place where he would get consistent playing time and finally take that next big step. He chose Fiorentina, and frankly, I think he made the perfect call. We will see if he can cement his place. Meanwhile, things are pretty quiet across the rest of Italy. AC Milan is trying to sell Leao, but the current offer from Galatasaray is simply not enough. Just 2 years ago, Milan was demanding 70, 80, or even 90 million euros for Leao. Today, they are struggling to get even 50 million. Galatasaray has offered somewhere between 35 and 40 million. I think they will wait to see if a bigger offer comes in before selling a player whose value has completely plummeted over the last few seasons. He checked out after declaring he wanted to leave Milan, and the current tactical system certainly has not helped his situation. It is a tough spot, because when you have a player who thrives as a natural, touchline hugging winger, but then you hire managers who do not use wingers. After all, Amorim prefers to play with three central defenders, deploying two wingbacks alongside three midfielders and two central attackers. How can you honestly expect a guy like Leao to shine in a rigid system like that? It is exactly why he struggled so much last year. He does not have the work rate of a center forward. He has never shown that kind of grit, and there is simply no space for him. Now, keep an eye on Napoli's goalkeeper situation. That is pretty much the state of play at Milan. Right now, they only have a preseason friendly scheduled this weekend, and once that is over, Amorim has to start making the tough decisions about who stays and who goes. Before making new signings, they absolutely have to sell some of these players, because they need to trim the squad down to 25 players, and right now, the roster is way too bloated. Over at Inter, the club seems pretty satisfied with the solid central defense they have put together, especially with the signing of John Stones. They would have loved to bring in Cuti Romero too, but the timing was all wrong, and once Atletico de Madrid hijacked the negotiations, Inter simply missed their chance. They clearly need a right back to replace Dumfries, but they still have not found their man. The message coming out of San Siro is patience. I think Beppe Marotta has earned enough trust to be given all the time he needs, even if fans wanted a new signing on day one of preseason training. Everyone wants that perfect red remade squad from the start, but the reality is that Inter already knows they will not have that luxury when it comes to the right back position. Still, they are confident they will land a solid right back before the transfer deadline. We just mentioned Napoli, and there is serious interest from Turkey for their goalkeeper, Milinkovic-Savic. If that deal goes through, Napoli will have to hunt for a replacement across Europe, with rumors pointing to a few potential targets in the Premier League. There are also reports of Napoli inquiring about the terms for Gabriel Jesus. The Brazilian has clearly fallen down the pecking order at Arsenal, and his situation will only get worse if the Gunners make another move for Julian Alvarez or a different marquee striker. Between having Victor Gyökeres and Kai Havertz ahead of him, and what we saw last season, Gabriel Jesus has been completely cast aside in North London. Plus, his current contract expires at the end of next season. So Napoli is testing the waters, hoping they can snap him up for a very reasonable price without Arsenal demanding some astronomical figure. Simultaneously, Napoli is working behind the scenes to lock down central midfielder Frank Anguissa, as the club is desperate to get him to sign a contract extension. We will see if he stays put. For now, that is the most important story. Looking elsewhere, Chelsea already brought in Maxence Lacroix, so their defensive line looks fairly settled for the upcoming campaign. Arsenal is still busy, and Martinelli might actually leave for Turkey. If Leandro Trossard has already departed and Martinelli follows him out the door, that left wing becomes a massive void. It certainly will not be filled by Vinicius, who just penned a new deal with Real Madrid. What happens if Vinicius fails to deliver this season, even with his new contract? That would make it 3 straight years of failing to get the best out of him alongside Mbappe. But we will save that debate for later. What is certain right now is that without Vinicius in the mix, because he signed that contract extension with Real Madrid, that left wing is a prime position that needs to be addressed in the transfer window, and it will be fascinating to see who they target. Of course, they could always try to make a move for Julian Alvarez. Even though Julian Alvarez is desperate to make the move, we have obviously talked a lot about Barcelona already. The whole debate is whether they can pull it off or not if it is actually going to happen. But at the end of the day, that is exactly what he wants. Still, the club is torn between signing a new striker or the left winger they desperately need. Especially if Martinelli, who is entering his final contract year with no renewal in sight, ends up packing his bags for Turkey. Or maybe Martinelli just plays dumb, runs down his final year, and leaves next summer with his own destiny in his hands. Next year could be wild. Take Gutierrez, the left back who started at Real Madrid, shined at Girona, and then moved to Napoli last year where he never quite found his spark. Now Napoli managed to squeeze 30 million out of his transfer to Bayer Leverkusen. it looks like an incredibly solid signing for them. It is one of those classic moves for a player who just never quite made that massive leap everyone expected. A lot of you who followed Serie A back when we did those live matches are definitely going to remember the Numerash Kumbula. Kumbula came through the academy over in Verona, looking like the ultimate center back of the future. Big clubs were absolutely fighting to sign him because of that massive potential. Well, he just landed at Rayo Vallecano on a loan deal from Roma. Just think about how Kumbula's career stalled, never quite reaching those massive heights. Meanwhile, Ismail Benacer has officially said a very emotional goodbye to AC Milan. He was not going to play a major role in the squad anymore, but both sides agreed to terminate his contract, sparking a truly emotional farewell letter from Benacer. The midfielder was such a crucial player for Milan once. He even talked about returning to the club someday in the future, maybe in some other role, or even in a completely different city, but he leaves with his head held high, and the Milan faithful really respect him. They truly love Benacer, even though this past season he was not nearly as sharp or as decisive on the pitch. Everyone remembers how, during those dark years of crisis when quality was thin, Benacer stepped up and completely dominated that Milan midfield. Right now, everything is up in the air as we wait to see how Barcelona registers Rodri after finalizing that deal, and whether Barcelona actually goes after a new striker. Then you have the Barcola negotiations, plus everyone waiting on Liverpool and Manchester City to make a deal. And with City sissing Rodri, my bet is they pivot hard toward Enzo Fernandez. Will Real Madrid make a move for Enzo Fernandez? They already said no way, even issuing an official statement denying any interest back then. Honestly, I just do not see him going to Madrid. He seems like a much better fit for Manchester City anyway. Is Real Madrid going to hunt for another midfielder now? Or will they repeat what they did during the chase for Julian Alvarez? Back then, they submitted a bid just to show they were in the mix, but they never actually bothered to follow through on signing a similar player. Now another deal that is officially in the books is Bruno Guimaraes. We are talking about nearly $80 million heading to Arsenal. The spending power in the Premier League is absolutely insane. For instance, a rival club inquired about Malo Gusto, and Chelsea slapped a price tag of $75 million on him. The sheer amount of cash in this market is hard to believe. Under Xabi Alonso, Chelsea has already pulled off several really intriguing signings that are turning a lot of heads. They just secured left-back Pep Chavaria from Rayo Vallecano for $19 million, plus another $2 million in add-ons. Sure, they love chasing blockbuster superstars, but they also bring in these crucial, hard-working role players that Xabi Alonso hand-picked to help flesh out the depth of the squad. Either way, he is yet another new weapon heading to Stamford Bridge for the grueling season ahead. That is exactly where this wild transfer market stands right now. Let me double-check to make sure I did not miss any other massive updates. For now, the entire window revolves around Barcelona and their desperate hunt for a new defensive midfielder. They are locked on Rodri, which could set off a massive domino effect involving Bradley Barcola. Get ready, because more huge names are bound to pop up. Also, Dibu Martinez is not headed to Juventus. Keep an eye out because he might actually stay at Aston Villa. He is currently in deep talks for a brand new contract to extend his stay at Villa Park, especially after coming off such an incredible campaign. We will just have to wait and see how this crazy transfer window plays out, but those are the major updates for now.